Hey everybody, and good morning. I'm Dr. Butler. Welcome back to the podcast. My voice is a little bit on the raspier side. I am getting over just being sick, but today I really wanted to focus on talking about everything in life being a numbers game. So I had a great conversation the other day, and it really boiled down to how healthcare is changing, the economy is changing, and everything in the world is really just becoming a numbers game. And that includes whether you're not, or you're somebody who wants to invest, or somebody who's actually really trying to build wealth. Sometimes it really just boils down to numbers. So the difference between how long it takes to make $1 million selling a product that costs $1, it's going to take you selling 1 million products versus like a chain establishment like McDonald's, or you actually just selling one product that costs $10,000, it's going to be a big difference in terms of how you approach everything. And the same thing works with the things you dislike. They're also playing a numbers game. So the conversation I was having was with a friend of mine, and that conversation revolved around how much it costs to continue to be in business doing private practice. So as a doctor, this person has been in private practice for about 25 years or so. And the issue is trying to keep the practice open, trying not to have to retire. But the problem here is that it is a volume game. The issue is that it's a volume game. And the issue with that is initially insurance used to have higher and higher reimbursements, but depending on what you do, like whether or not you're a surgeon or you're OB-GYN or you're a family medicine doctor, a lot of things that you used to get reimbursed for on a regular basis are now becoming more and more obsolete, or you're following USPS task force guidelines that say, hey, let's say even if you're a GI specialist, right? You used to be able to do that colonoscopy every 3 years or every 5 years, or you get it more booked. Now it's like things that used to be every 3 years, maybe every 5 years, and things that used to be every 5 years are now every 10 years, which means that reimbursements are slowing down, and the volume that you need in order to pick up the reimbursements that you do need to get properly paid are increasing, which means that before you might have been able to be like, hey, I'm going to go do 4 colonoscopies, and then I'm going to play golf for the rest of the day, right? A cardiologist back in the day might have been like, hey, I'm doing 2 or 3 caths, and then I'm going to go play golf for the rest of the day or hang out with my family. But that's not the case now. Like, these are things that become your bread and butter, and now you have to spend all day in the lab doing these things just to make the bare minimum and to still kind of grind it out. So, because the way that our world works is now a volume based game, and then the people who control health insurance aren't necessarily, or the people who control health aren't necessarily in the health field. Like most of the times, the administrators may or may not be in the health field. The C suites may or may not be in the health field. The insurance people who operate the reimbursements and how much something costs, and the DRG of your hospital or DRG of your patients, or the level of reimbursements that people are able to provide, it's not based on how sick they may or may not be. It's based on volume, and it's based on what everyone thinks, right? So a lot of the times things are happening as a prevention game and not a acutely treated game. And because of that, that means that you have to work more and more and more, and you're going to get paid less and less as the cost of living continues to rise, as inflation continues to rise, which means that you're doing the same job, you're doing more of it, you're doing it harder, but you're getting paid less for it, which is really rough, man. So, like, imagine that you're having to do this all the time. So, initially, let's just take into perspective. If you were told, 5 years ago, hey, flip 10 burgers, it's worth $180,000. You're like, great. You flip 10 burgers, you get $180,000. And then you just do that all year. And on a daily basis, you're flipping 10 burgers a day. But now it's gotten to the point where if you're working for bigger places, you're working for places like Kaiser or Penn Health or something like that, you might be to the point where you're flipping 20 burgers a day or 24 burgers a day or, 28 burgers a day. And it's getting to the point where it's kind of a little bit difficult, right? So even as a hospitalist, initially starting off, you might have been like, hey, we're seeing 12 patients a day, plus we're doing admissions. But it's gotten to the point where sometimes it's like, now you have somebody who's just doing admissions, and you're still seeing, 18, you might be capped at 20 patients or capped at 18 patients. The volume is increasing. You have to see more and more. You have to work harder and harder. Your mistakes have to be tighter and tighter, and your margins have to be slimmer and slimmer. And it's just still to survive. It's not like you're magically given more patients and all of a sudden they're like, oh, by the way, this comes with a huge bonus and you're going to be paid more and you'll be happier. It doesn't work like that. That's not how it works. It's not how the world works. What's happening is the world is a numbers game. And in order to keep up with the numbers, you have to keep up with the volume. And a lot of issues that revolve around healthcare and the financial space is that we're not keeping up with the numbers for ourselves, but we keep up with the numbers for other people. So that means in your primary practice, if you're trying to keep your business afloat and you're working in your own private, maybe you have a facility or pain management clinic, or you have a internal medicine office or a GI office or whatever it is, there's a lot of volume there. And in order to keep up with the expenses and in order to keep up with the slow reimbursement time and the fact that they're paying you later and later and they're paying you less and less, you have to keep up with the volume. Now, you're keeping up with volume with everybody else, but are you keeping up with the volume for yourself? Because in this case, like, you're going to say, how many properties do you own? Or how many stocks do you own? Or how many businesses do you own? How many things do you own that are going to keep up with the volume of your income and replacing it eventually? Because the issue is that in order to retire comfortably, in order to have what you're looking for in life, you're going to make sure that you have to have the same approach for your own life. If the rest of the world is playing a volumes game, you need to be in that same game. You need to be in that same running and same race, right? Like, one property is not necessarily going to like change your life. Like, it will change your life. One property can definitely change your life. It can actually make everything 10 times better. But the issue is you won't stop at one. It's like eating Pringles or something. I don't know. Like, you're not going to eat one Pringle and be like, man, that was the best Pringle I've ever had in my life. I'm full forever. That's not what's going to happen. Like, some people hate Pringles, whatever. But you won't stop at one. You'll do one and then you'll do the next and then you'll do the next and you'll do the next. The same thing with stocks. Like, you're not going to be like, I really love Tesla. I bought it at 80 cents. I bought one stock. Great. Like, but what happens if you would have kept buying the stocks, right? Like, buying one stock would have been nice, but it's like, it's a volume game. You wouldn't have been wealthy, right? One stock option at 90 cents back in 2008, you're like, yeah, that would have been nice, but 40,000 stocks would have made you a multimillionaire. So it's a volume game. If you want to acquire wealth, if you want to be able to survive and retire comfortably and enjoy time with your family, it is going to be a volume game. So if you're going to be trading in the stock market, then you're going to trade with volume. So building that volume over time, scaling your positions over time, being able to have more real estate over time, the volume game is what there is to build upon. Now, a lot of people might see like gurus on the internet and they're like, oh, hey, don't buy this, buy this. And they're talking about real estate. And even though that point is true, it's not one property that's changing everything, because one property might cash flow you a few $100s a month. Well, depending on how you're doing it, if it's Airbnb or corporate leases and things like that, then you might get a little bit higher money. But in this case, it's still a volume game. So if you have one unit that's doing for $500-600 a month, but you have 12 units or 13 units or 14 units, then all of a sudden that cash flow starts to become enough passive income to where it's taking over your initial salary. That's the thing about a lot of people in healthcare and higher careers. Like, if you're like, hey, I'm a lawyer, or hey, I'm a doctor, or hey, I'm a nurse practitioner. The thing is, you specialize so long in the field that you work in, you trained so long in the field that you work in, that you believe that most times there's no other training necessary. But this doesn't apply to just high career people. It applies to anyone who has a very particular set of skills and then decide not to apply more skills to other skill sets. So what I mean by that is, like, even though I am a doctor and I took a very long time to learn exactly what it takes to help the human body, to build the human body, to help it heal, to try to combat all of these diseases and things, at the same time, I still did not stop my skill set. I had to go learn something else, because just having one skill set isn't enough. Having one skill set doesn't actually just, it's not the end all be all. Now, if you have wheelhouses that revolve around your skill set, that's even better. That's way better. But in this case, for me, it didn't feel like enough because I've had offers, I had multi-million dollar offers to work in private medicine and be like, hey, take over this firm. But the issue with that is if you're the main cog in that wheel, then you can never escape it. And because you can never escape it, it makes it something that you're always going to be trapped in. So that's like the golden handcuffs, right? So it's like, hey, for 2 million a year or for 3 million a year, you can come and work at this private practice doing such and such and such and such. And actually, you can take over this. That just means that it's kind of like owning a Chick-fil-A franchise, right? So a Chick-fil-A franchise, it doesn't cost that much to buy. You have to get approved. But here's the thing. When you buy the franchise, all you did was buy a very nice salary, right? Because there's expenses, there's overheads and everything like that. Then you're the actual manager and the main focus point of that franchise, right? So Chick-fil-A is the only franchise that it's like, even though people love Chick-fil-A, I would never actually purchase the franchise because when you buy the franchise, you have to work there on a salary as the manager. So you just bought a job for life. I don't want to buy a job for life. I don't want to physically have to show up to the office every single day to make things function. I want it to function without me. So like if I'm dealing with trucks, the trucks function without me. I don't have to drive, I don't have to wake up, I don't have to put DEF fluid in the truck, I don't have to put diesel fluid in the truck, I don't have to go check the trailer and make sure that all the tires are inflated. I don't have to do that because my job is not to make sure that I create a functional business that I have to function in. That defeats the purpose, and that is not accessible in terms of a volume game. And the reason is because there's only one of you. There's only one of me. There's only one of you. So if there's only one of you, how can you replicate yourself and create volume if you're involved in everything you do? And the answer is you can't. So the answer is you can't. So in order to actually do something where you're expanding and building, it means that you don't need to be involved. You might be able to have control over it or oversee it, but you don't want to directly be involved. The more involved you are, the more intricate something is, and it needs your touch, the further and further away from the ideal lifestyle and goal you're going to be at, right? So think about it. How many Disneylands are there? And how many Disney syndicate things are there? Like you have like Disney stores, you have Disneyland, you have Disney World, you have Disney World International, but then you have Disney Studios. Now, how many times do you think that a direct descendant of Disney is physically at Disneyland making sure somebody is picking up trash or making sure that the person who is making the Mickey Mouse lollipops make them with just the right sweetness? I highly, highly doubt that somebody from Disney is like standing there watching the other person. Like, not, I mean, not like an employee. I mean, from the Disney family. Like somebody from the Disney family is sitting there watching the other person make these Mickey Mouse earring hats, right? You know, like they're not doing that. Why? Because you don't want to directly be involved. You want the franchise to work for itself. You want the business to work for itself. And then it's just a volume game. So if you're able to sell a certain product, if you're able to incorporate doing a certain business and that business is able to operate and you operate completely exclusive from that business, this is how wealth is built. And it doesn't have to be super complicated. If you have no idea about business, but you still want to be involved in a major business, just think of one thing. Think of one thing that already exists in the world, and then there's stocks that mimic that, right? So if you're like, I love Target with all my heart, my wife makes me shop at Target, the Target has a Starbucks in it. You just found two stocks. Great, Starbucks and Target. Why? Because you always go there. That means they're always going to be there, right? Things that are like things that disappeared today that would leave an economic ruin on the world are things that you want to be invested in. So if you're like, I don't know, I don't want to build and create and start a Target from scratch, but there's Targets everywhere, great, then just buy the stock. Have the dividends from that stock pay you. These are just ideas that you can use in order to get the same information and the same idea of building a volume game. So how many stocks are you going to buy? Are you going to be like, I'm going to buy one stock and I know that my children's children's children will be able to live off this one stock? It's not how it works. The world is a numbers game. And now, where we are in the world economically, the world costs more numbers, right? The numbers are growing, the numbers are getting higher. That's how inflation and stagflation and things of that nature work, because the numbers are growing and growing. Here's the issue though: the income that we need to survive off of, those numbers are not growing rapidly enough to keep up with the growth of other numbers. The average income, now I'm not talking about just doctors, but I'm like, the average income of our society is somewhere around $50 to $60,000 a year. But the average rental property is anywhere from $1,400 to $2,000 a month. So if you just do the math, you mean like half your salary, right? Automatically half your, if you make $50,000 a year, $55,000 a year, half of your money is supposed to go to just living. Like not living expenses, not paying your bills, not like just the living space, not even the electricity, not the groceries, not going to the movies, not buying clothes, not paying for gas, not going back and forth to work, not buying a bed to sleep on. Half. But what do you do when the government is taking the other half? So it means you're getting taxed into oblivion. So it's not like if you're making 55,000, you don't take home 55,000, right? So that means if you make 55,000 and then you're a single income earner, or even if you're married and you have a few kids, you're making 55,000, and then after taxes, let's say you're taking home 40. Let's say you take home 40 after that, and then all of a sudden your living expenses is 24,000 a month or 24,000 a year. Already over half of what you actually have to truly use on living is gone already. And people might think, oh, well, doctors are rich and doctors don't have this kind of problem and stuff like that. No, the numbers just change. You might be paying rent, they might be paying mortgage. You might be shopping at Target, they may be shopping at Whole Foods. But with the inflation being the way it is, hell, we're all shopping at Walmart. So it doesn't matter that you have to think about numbers as a volume game. You have to think long term. Where can you get the most bang for your buck? I don't care if I'm a multi-billionaire or if I'm just somebody who has a few dollars in my pocket. I want the biggest bang for my buck at all times, which is why I moved from California. To be honest, if I really thought about it on a grand scale, I probably would have went to a place like Florida or Texas. It would have made more sense. Like to think, 15, 20 years down the line, with like income state taxes and things like that, it would have made more sense to go someplace like that. So you have to think biggest bang for your buck, and you have to think a volume game. And you also have to make sure that whatever volume game that you're playing, it's something that can continue with or without you, preferably without you. You want something that's involved with volume and with numbers that functions without your help. You don't want to have 100% ownership and 100% of the work. So what I mean by that is, what good is having 100% of nothing, right? So if you own 100% of zero, you still have zero. So it's better to be like, oh, I own 100% of this company, but I'm sharing the profits with everyone. If you're sharing the profits with everyone, you making other people money will make you way more money than you doing it yourself. So if you worked at a hospital and you're like, oh, well, I'm the doctor, I control this, I control that, I control this, I control that. That's great, but it takes all of your effort. Now, what if instead you own the clinic, but you didn't physically work there? But you pay the nurse practitioner, you pay the nurses, you pay the staff, you pay everyone who works there with you, but you don't physically have to work there. That means you're making a fraction of what you would make, but you're doing zero of the time. And if something costs you no time, but still makes you money, you are winning no matter what the volume of that income is. So what I mean by that is, I'd rather, like, if I own a franchise, let's say, again, not a Chick-fil-A, let's say McDonald's or whatever like that. I don't want to own the McDonald's and the McDonald's is making, let's say, $1 million a month, or $1 million, let's say $100,000 a month. Let's just make the numbers simple. If it makes $100,000 a month, let's say profit, $100,000 a month net profit, and I have to actually physically go every day and lock up and clean up and work there every single day. I got to make sure it's opened on time. I got to make sure it's closed on time. And what I'm getting in return is $100,000 profit. I'd rather, from that $100,000, pay 20,000 to make sure that there's somebody who goes and locks up, cleans up, sweeps up, locks the door. So it would cost me 20,000 of the profit. And let's say I only, let's say after paying all of those expenses from the profit, I only net $30,000 a month. Okay, great. I only get to take home $30,000 a month, and the other 70 are used to pay people to go do things that now I don't have to do. My time is now free, so I'd rather take the 20,000, give up the other 80,000, and now I'm not physically working anymore at all. So then what? Now what I need is 4 more locations doing the same thing. Now I'm passively making 100,000 because now I have the 4 locations doing the same. So total 5 locations doing the exact same thing. Now I'm passively making 100,000. Now I could have 1 location making me 100,000, but I'd have to put time into it versus having 5 locations and I have to put 0 time into it. I don't have to show up. I don't have to check. I don't have to do any of that. The accountants will check that. The people who get paid to do it, who are taking up the profit, will do that. And now I'm no longer responsible for it. I just collect. That's where you want to sit. That's how the volume game works, to where you have both your freedom and your time. And I'd rather have the time because you can never get the time back. You can always make more money. You can always earn more money. You can always do an extra shift, but you'll never get the time back. So think about the world as a volume game, and then once you understand that the volume of numbers and have them work in your favor and count them up properly, then you'll be on the right track to building the wealth that you're actually looking for. And then with the wealth, you have what you truly want. Because in reality, you have to ask yourself, do you truly just want money? Because if you want money, that doesn't make a lot of sense, because money is only something you transfer for something you want. Like, you might not just be like, man, I really wish I had a lot of money on Tuesday. You don't want the money. You want the money to go buy tacos on Tuesdays and drink and hang out with your friends. So you want money to do something. You want money for an experience or for food or for living or for something. The money is not just for the money. The money is for something in exchange. So in this case, as always, we probably went a little bit over, but I'm wishing you guys all the best health, wealth, and happiness. And I can't wait to see you guys next week. Take care.